One cannot even take a small step into the Western philosophical tradition without hearing the name Plato being uttered at least once. In many ways, he is the originator of Western philosophy by means of writing down and expanding on his teacher Socrates' ideas. Plato has left us around 35 dialogues, which are fictitious, for the most part fictitious, conversations between one or more characters, or two or more characters. Usually Socrates is the main character for all of these dialogues. Now, although some dialogues are about much more interesting topics and are much more popular, one cannot jump around from dialogue to dialogue willy-nilly and get the entirety of Plato's ideas. One has to put great care into choosing which dialogues he starts with and which one he ends with, so that he does not get lost within the very vast ideas that are presented. Before I can get into which reading list one should have when entering into Plato, I have to tell you how I did it, which is the wrong way. I first heard about Plato in a documentary that was played to us in school when I was about 13 in the 8th grade, in which they talked about Plato's Republic, which in the modern world is probably the contender for the most popular of Plato's dialogue. I would say the Republic and the Symposium are the most popular. The Republic was very alluring to me, and the way it was described, how it set out to make the perfect government, really took hold of my thought, and I wanted to read it very badly, as I imagine a lot of you have in the past or currently think you want to do. But when I was 13, I knew I was far too young to read it, so I put it on the back burner and did some other things. When I was a freshman in college, I decided to pick up the book and read it for myself, just going straight into it. It was my first ever Platonic work. And although it was quite a illuminating experience for me, I felt that I was extraordinarily lost in a lot of the ideas that Plato presented. Namely the ideas of the forms, the divided line, the true meaning of the analogy of the cave, and the myth of Ur went way over my head, and I did not know what he was talking about. And I left the Republic thinking that it was just a blueprint for a very strange aristocracy, when in reality, maybe the most pivotal work of Western philosophy that tries to seek to define justice in the purest form and also as a architect for reality. So now that we know not to do, as in just jump straight into the dialogues you want to read, especially the Republic, let's go into a reading list of Plato's dialogues so that we can better grasp his ideas and gently move along his canon. So it's important to note that modern scholarship separates Plato's work into 3 periods: the early, middle, and late period. And in the early period, it's mainly the ideas of Socrates taking hold that Plato has written down for us. And the middle and the late periods are more of Plato's own ideas that build off of Socrates' ideas. Out of the early period, I believe that the Euthyphro, the Apology, the Gorgias, the Protagoras, and the Crito are the most important to read. The subject of these dialogues is usually Socrates going around and poking holes in arguments that Athenians make, and these arguments usually encapsulate the general conceived morality of the Athenians, and also some other things about, answering questions and trying to get to the true definition of words. Moving on to his middle period, one should read the Phaedo, the Meno, the Parmenides, and the Republic, saving the Republic for the last, and not taking the Parmenides too seriously. The second part of the Parmenides is notoriously difficult, and I sure as hell don't get it. And then on to the later period, picking up the Critias, the Timaeus, and possibly the Laws, if it interests you. Moving within this order of books, one should get the core concepts and beliefs of Plato quite easily. I would say these are the most important books out of all of them, and they are not all the dialogues he has written, but I'd say these are the most important ones to read. Now, it should keep in mind that when you are reading these dialogues, remember that they are indeed literary works, as in there are symbolisms and motifs that you have to pay attention to, right? It's not just an essay like you would read from other philosophers. What I mean by that is that when a character does something, they're not just doing it. Plato didn't write them to do it just to do it, right? Or when Plato picks a character that acts a certain way, it's all for meaning. You need to realize that to get the true meaning out of these dialogues. For instance, in the Republic, when Socrates is having a mass discussion with, I think, a group of 5 or 6 people, the personalities of these people represent a part of government that he wishes to eliminate, or he wishes to illustrate, and shows their the wrongness of them, or what's wrong about them. Although I recommended only a handful of his dialogues, I have to make note that I have not read entirely everything. I've read more than what I've recommended. I've left out some that I personally thought were not as interesting or didn't really deal with a whole lot. As I said in the beginning, the Republic and the Symposium are tied for the most popular in today's age. I am not a fan of the Symposium. Maybe its meaning is lost on me, but I didn't see its importance when discussing Plato's greater ideas. I think it's certainly one of his more literary ones, and maybe more entertaining, but certainly not as thrilling as the other ones. Alternatively, you could skip Plato altogether and move on to other philosophers and other more modern philosophers and be a midwit for the rest of your life. The philosophy of Plato is not just ancient, old garbage. All of philosophy is essentially derived from Plato, albeit maybe small modern stuff like the mind-body problem, maybe. As I believe his name was George Whitehead, or a philosopher named Whitehead, said, all of philosophy is just a footnote of Plato. So it is important to understand these ideas, not because they are necessarily the simplified, or the ideas that arose as very simple things that we now build off of being greater. They themselves are quite vast and comprehensive of reality.